Over the course of 38 days of major combat operation, the joint force achieved the military objectives as defined by the president. We welcome the ongoing ceasefire. We hope that Iran chooses a lasting peace. The joint force remains ready, if ordered or called upon, to resume combat operations with the same speed and precision as we've demonstrated over the last 38 days, and we hope that that is not the case.
Ceasefire for now. The markets ripping higher as President Trump and Iran hit pause. After weeks of escalation, threats of Stone Age destruction, and a ticking deadline, the United States and Iran reaching a fragile two-week truce. The Department of War declaring a decisive military victory. And ships are starting to slowly but surely trickle through the Strait of Hormuz. But is this peace or just a timeout? Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Dagan McDowell, along with my co-hosts Taylor Riggs, Jerry Willis, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for this hour, Sidekick Operators President Chris Valletta. After Tuesday's Bridge Day came down to the wire, markets responding like this thing is over done. But the vice president says it is not time to exhale.
The Iranians have agreed to open up the straits. The United States has agreed to stop attacking. And that, not just the United States, but also our allies, have agreed to stop attacking. And that is the basis of this fragile truce that we have, which is now, 8 to 12 hours old.
One of the most critical oil choke points in the world is starting to open up. The first tanker is crossing the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices tanking. We're now well below $100 a barrel after topping out at 117 just a day ago. 94.71 a barrel. Jackie, I'm going to come to you first on this. The Saudi Arabia's oil pipeline to the Red Sea, the east-west, was hit by a drone attack Wednesday afternoon. This is according to multiple reports. So it's not all calm.
Yeah.
And I will just point out one thing. 67.26 is where West Texas Intermediate was before the conflict started.
Right. So last night when I heard the news, the first thing I did was check the futures and look at the oil prices. And I saw that the markets were happy about this. Futures were indicating the kind of numbers you're seeing on the screen right now, and oil prices dropped from that 117 to this roughly $95 a barrel. So that is remarkable. The markets have confidence in what we're seeing right now. I sort of did a pro and con list in my mind of how I feel about this, and the Saudi aspect that you brought up is a piece of that. The pros are that I trust the administration and I trust the team and what the overall objectives are that they're trying to do here. There are definitely different ways to skin this cat, and people will criticize how they're trying to do it, but to get to the end result, there are several strategies that can be employed here. The market liked it, and I like when diplomacy is used as an option. I often criticized Joe Biden for not trying diplomatic strategies when it came to Russia invading Ukraine and just allowing it to happen and turning it into something much larger than it potentially could have been. So I applaud them for what they're doing. There are some cons here, however, though. Some of the reports are indicating that Iran is keeping a very tight grip on the strait, so you can't cross without strict permission. Otherwise, the ships will be destroyed. Right now, that's not happening, but they want that permission. They want to be in charge of who is coming in and who is going out. And when I think about that, I think about the fact that we've been talking about we can't really trust them. I know the administration has been using the words new regime to describe what's happening here. To me, it's not a regime change. It's tentacles of the old regime that still are very, very problematic long term. So I think what President Trump is trying to do is play a longer term game here. I'm not going to speculate on what that strategy is, but I think this is a piece of it. And remember, this isn't over right now. As you mentioned, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon is out of this. Hezbollah is in Lebanon. So there's been some conflict there. It can take one thing that the Iranians do to kind of push this in a different direction to once again create a little bit of a tinderbox. But I also respect the fact that the president has to take so many decisions into account. And what he really wanted was to get the strait open. At least for right now, it appears that it is. So that's a positive for today. But for me, it's not over here.
I hear your Strait of Hormuz and I raise you the markets because I think the bad news, like you said, we're trading on headlines and the headlines could change in a second. The good news, I'm like you, Jackie, I did a bad news and a good news list. The good news is we talked yesterday about how the market was just looking for an excuse to go higher. We talked about how retail investors were not buying the dip. And once you see a washout like we had seen 82% of the time, you get a significant rally of about 4% in the following 2 months. So I think the good news is if today's rally holds, I think that's a good sign of momentum going forward. Were this to fade into the close, I think that would be sort of a negative near-term signal. So assuming this holds, the good news is we've had a peak to trough pullback in the S&P 500 of 9%. That's about the average of 10%, 14% that we've seen since the great financial crisis. The average subsequent gain after that is about 19% the following year. And so you're wondering, again, if the market's trying to read these signals and power higher. The good news as well is this does seem to come on despite the headlines. I think people want to get back to business and talk about fundamentals, right? And so I was reading one note this morning that said we're downgrading oil stocks. Peak oil is behind us. Oil stocks are up 15 to 35% since the war started. So we can downgrade those, get out and get back to earnings, valuations, fundamentals, what stocks look cheap. Claude came out with a new program, Dagan, that we can talk about, right? And so I think the market is just itching to find a reason to go higher. Again, headlines can change in a second, but I think for now, this feels like good news.
What if it's just a ceasefire? And that's it. It's just a permanent ceasefire, and this is the new normal. But Iran had one chance and one shot to use the Strait of Hormuz as a weapon. And now every other nation in that region is going to work on workarounds for the Strait of Hormuz, just like the East-West pipeline was built 45 years ago by Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, I see your markets. I'll raise you the impact on Main Street. How about that? But no, it's like yesterday, Wall Street was pricing in a war. Today, it's almost like it's pricing in a peace deal and reacting like everything's over. So nothing's over yet, but if the strait reopens and stays open, obviously it's a massive tailwind to anyone that fills up their gas tank. But when you look at the supply chain infrastructure in the United States, the 13 to 15 million heavy-duty diesel trucks that we have running on the roads every single day, fuel costs are the bloodline to the American economy. And we're on the front lines of this every single day. One of our partner companies is Uptime Fleet Services. They're doing repair and maintenance and inspections on all of this equipment. And we're talking about the infrastructure. We're talking about trucks bringing food across the country. We're talking about the bucket trucks doing work on our power lines. We're talking about our emergency vehicles with our fire trucks and our ambulances. These are what keeps America running. And the ripple effects of the strait staying open is ultimately what strengthens the American infrastructure. And that's what it's all about.
Look, I just say whether it's the end of the war or not, I mean, we don't really know. So much further to go. The gains today are real, right? The reduction in oil prices, I read that it's equivalent to 75 cents to $1 per gallon overnight. Good news there. The market's on fire here. Love that. The first text this morning when I got into work was from my husband, who said, hey, look at all the money I've made with doing absolutely nothing. Everybody can play that game, right? But I just want to say I have two other concerns that nobody's addressing today. And one is, can we please just get a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz? And I would love to have no Iranian tolls on the Strait, A. And B, there's enriched uranium in Iran that we need to track down, get, and take away. And it's in the Isfahan complex. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's enriched up to 60%, is the closest to weapons grade that they have. We need to get that. That is one of my big concerns because a dirty bomb would be devastating.
Yeah.
Did you hear Secretary Hegseth talk about the uranium this morning? Do you want to jump in?
I'm sorry, I can't remember specifically what he said about the uranium. I was listening to the overall speech. But the uranium is something that I addressed before. And when I had said, I'm not speculating what the long-term plan is that President Trump is assessing here, that's definitely got to be a piece of it, because they can't be left with that. I think they were talking about going after it, Dagan, correct me if I'm wrong, and trying to get, use B-52s, and they isolated the specific area, and talking about the uranium dust. I'm not sure exactly how this will work in practice, but that's a piece of it. Now, there's been some conversation before this that the special forces that moved over into the region would be deployed in order to go and take that uranium out. But you're right, you have to get your hands on that. You've got to ultimately, in my view, change this regime, because they are not trustworthy. And you've got to open up the strait in a way where they cannot use it as a choke point anymore. What I'm seeing right now is perhaps from the Iranian side, an opportunity for them to agree to this, to catch their breath a little bit, because it's been much harder on them than it has been on us. But also for President Trump to sort of reassess. Remember, as I said, there are so many moving parts here. One last thing, Dagan, that I thought was interesting was some of the reports about who was involved even tangentially in the negotiations, China and Pakistan, namely, because they are buyers of the crude oil that comes out of the region, specifically the Iranian oil. So to me, while you've got Democrats saying this is a taco situation for President Trump, Trump always chickens out, Trump didn't chicken out. If anybody's chickening out, it's the people who were choking as a result of the oil right now. So that is why I say this is a bigger, you always say he's 40 moves ahead on the chessboard. Dagan, that's what I am seeing here. I'm not exactly sure where he's going with it, but that's...
Here is Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, and also President Trump in a Truth Social post, and also in some phone interviews that he's done this morning, is right, obviously, in line with the Secretary of War, or vice versa, on if Iran does not hand over the enriched uranium, the United States will take it. Iran knows they will never have a nuclear weapon. Hegseth, it's always been non-negotiable that they, meaning Iran, won't have nuclear capabilities. And right now, it's buried, and we're watching it. We know exactly what they have, and they know that. And they will either give it to us, which the president has laid out. Well, they'll give it to us voluntarily, or we'll get it. We'll take it out. Or if we have to do something else ourselves, like we did with Midnight Hammer, something like that, we reserve that opportunity. But what's clear, what the new Iranian regime knows, is they'll never have a nuclear weapon or the capability to get a path to one.
From his lips to
here's the
God's
thing,
ear,
guys.
I hope that's absolutely true, and I think it's more than just dust here. Obviously, there's, what is it? It's 440 kilograms that we're talking about. It's important, and I hope they are able to take
they're
care of
not
it.
handing it over. They're just not. They are not handing it over. And that's why I say it leaves room for this to go in different ways, because I believe them when they say, if you don't hand it over, we will come in and take it.